And actually we'll be also talking to the chair of the Haemophilia Society after 8:30 here on Breakfast this morning.
It's approaching 6:30 now. Time to get the news, travel and weather. Wherever you're watching, we'll have the main... Hello, good morning. Watching Breakfast with Louise and Dan.
And as we wait to find out who will be the next tenant of number 10.
Here's a summary of today's main stories from BBC. Holly is with us today on the lovely red sofa, reflecting on more success for the man who's just... He's in a pool of his own, isn't he?
He is quite literally in a pool of his own, Dan. And it feels like sometimes he is just competing with himself, breaking his own world records, winning yet another title here yesterday. But the funny thing was he actually broke his own record on Sunday, becoming the first man to do it in 57 seconds, the 100-metre breaststroke, which in itself is just remarkable. But then the first question that anyone asked him after he won a gold title was, are you disappointed that you didn't beat your own record? I mean, he's the only man that can win 3 titles in a row, and someone asked him, is he disappointed? It is remarkable. But he himself has said he wants to go. It was a great clip of his grandmother doing the rounds yesterday as well, who said that she hadn't drunk brandy in, I think, over 30 years or something. And she had 2 brandies to celebrate, and she was feeling the effects of it the next day.
Nice to see some live buffering on that video as well there. It was,
do we have buffering?
Yeah, we saw the Wheel of Doom, yeah. Is he holding a press conference later, is that right?
Yes, that's right. He's holding a press conference in Ireland later on today. So it'll be interesting to hear just how he is. Hope he's okay. Still celebrating.
He's probably in a good mood, yeah.
Thank you. Coming up to 20 to 7, you're watching Breakfast. Very good morning. The Information Commissioner's Office says it's seriously concerned about how the policy of gathering mobile phone data impacts the privacy of victims of crime.
Following high-profile failures to disclose evidence to defendants, police in England and Wales have introduced forms asking victims for permission to view their messages, photos and social media accounts. If they don't agree, then prosecutions could be stopped.
Well, let's talk to Katie Russell from Rape Crisis, which is calling for a change in the policy. Morning to you. I know you're really quite concerned about what you think is going on. Tell us what your concerns are.
We have so many concerns about this policy. One is around fair.
What have they said that experience has been like of handing over their devices?
Well, a lot of the victims and survivors...
Talk to you about the Liam Allen case, because I know you'll obviously be very familiar with this one. He was falsely accused of 12 counts of rape and sexual assault. And then 2 years after that, the case was actually dropped, wasn't it? Because the officer who was in charge was found to have failed to disclose vital evidence found on the complainant's digital device. So it can, so in some cases, there is information which the police need. So how do they get that while being fair and while not, invading people's privacy?
Perpetrator even met the alleged victim and so on and so forth.
So they would say, and they have said, they have a sort of duty to pursue reasonable lines of inquiry, and they might argue that some of those things from years before might actually be relevant to the current case. How do you sort of square that up?
Very briefly, that we're learning with this as well. There's so much more that needs to be, all this time this is changing, isn't it? An analysis of that, thank you.
The National Police Chiefs Council says it recognises concerns of some privacy and victims' organisations and says it has been seeking advice from a wide range of groups as well.
OK, so it's coming up to 6:45. Have any of you looked at the sunrise this morning? It was rather beautiful. Beautiful this morning. It was a really kind of beautiful red up here.
It was in many areas because...
See how that changes over the course of the morning. It's 6:48. So, Carol's been telling us this week the UK is expected to see the hottest day of the year so far.
The reasons that if you did have one, would it work?
No, because when you freeze something, it creates more moisture. So as soon as you put that moisture in a hot environment, on the room temperature is very important. I think, again, like a bath or a bath sort of just before bed, making that bath before bed a little bit. It doesn't, in the long term, it doesn't. And actually, the way our bodies work, core temperature is important.
Some of these have been suggested by our viewers. Gloria says she put aircon in their bedroom, and it's the best money they've ever spent. Karen says she uses natural sheepskin. Luxury to sleep on and regulates your body temperature. Kathleen recommends filling a hot water bottle with cold water, as you said. Angela wrapping a frozen water bottle in a tea towel and putting your ankles on it. She says it works a treat. And Stephen recommends keeping all the curtains, blinds and windows closed during the day and only opening at night when the sun goes down.
Yeah, I think all those things are great. I think natural fibres are great. Things like wool, alpaca fleece, bamboo, silk, they help the body breathe. The fibres we've used for bedding, things like feathers and down, trap heat in. So you create an environment that's really warm. And
I'm off to get my alpaca and bamboo pyjamas on tonight.
Oh, so
Natural
much I can say.
fibres,
Don't
Louise.
bother with the pyjamas. Anyway, that's not official advice. Thank you very much. I think you're back later as well, aren't you?
I am, yes.
If you've got any questions, send them in. and
Suggestions like
through,
mine.
Yeah, we'll go through them with James a little bit later on. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
School leavers aren't ready for the world of work. This is according to a large number of employers. Steph is looking into it. It was you need to have your feet cold. That was my main thing.
That's where I went wrong. Yeah, get your feet out, Joe, next time.
Socks off tonight.
Thanks, Bo. Thank you very much.
Right, let's get news, travel and weather wherever you're watching. We'll be back at 7 o'clock with the major headlines for you. See you then. Good morning, welcome to breakfast. It's Tuesday morning, watching with Louise Minchin and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you today. Very good morning. Tuesday, the 23rd of July, our main story for you. We will know by lunchtime today who will be our next Prime Minister, as the results of the Conservative leadership contest are due to be announced later on this morning. Boris Johnson is the clear favourite over his rival, the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt.
But Mr Johnson could face ministerial resignations before he enters Downing Street, if that's what happens, as several cabinet members say they can't support his do-or-die pledge to leave the EU by the end of October.
So let's get more from our political-born screening checks for rare but serious health conditions.
While many European nations offer 20 checks or more, here in Britain babies are screened for only 9 conditions, while in Northern Ireland screening is limited to 5. Here's our health...
For example, it did not go your way, then what?
Well,
It did not vote the way you want it to go. But you would support the second time round, would you, leaving, for example, if the vote confirmed it?
I
mentioned in this interview about working with other people. Does that include, for example, Boris Johnson or Jeremy Hunt, whoever becomes leader of the Conservative Party? In Westminster, the first to go and vote with her baby, for example. What changes would make a difference, do you think, to the whole of the Westminster estate? What would you like to see happen? Thanks for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.
So, Joe is the new leader of the Liberal Democrats. We'll find out a little bit later on today who's going to be the
Just
new
before
leader
12 o'clock.
of the Conservatives. And tomorrow they'll take over at number 10. Apparently it only takes an hour for the changeover, the handover. And then Theresa May is out and either Boris Johnson or Jeremy Hunt is in. Today, Carol is doing the weather. She's live at Blenheim Palace for us. It was very foggy there this morning, but as you can see, the fog... Only windows here, but I'm assuming it's quite nice outside.
I'm trying to peep under the curtain over there. It was beautiful this morning.
Is it nice outside?
I had a little peek for you. It is. I can report it looks lovely outside.
Can we have a look? Let's get Salford. Oh!
No, don't we all? It's brilliant.
We spoke to was it the secretary or the manager of Esker Hills Golf Club where he was based, and it's fair to say they are ready to welcome him home.
Absolutely.
He woke up and he wasn't sure whether he was good enough to win a major title.
Yeah, he said he just didn't want to mess it up.
But he was brilliant, and the event itself was fantastic. And my favourite stat still remains that he's the first golfer with a beard to win the Open since 1882.
It's funny, I saw that, and we were talking about that before, and it's just such a random fact, but it's brilliant. But it was such an amazing event, and Portrush really did itself proud as well.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be back there soon as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Holly. moment, we do have a test for about 9 different things.
Yes.
How much difference does that make, do you think, to children's lives?
So that's pretty simple and acceptable to do. So the main test we do is on the blood spot, which is a relatively simple thing to do. And it has to make a difference. So there are lots of things that can be screened for, but there has to be a detectable early phase of the condition. You have to be able to intervene early, because you can screen for
Italy, where they test for 43 things, or you mentioned the US there, where 57 tests are sort of used on newborn babies. It seems like, oh, why can't we have that many tests? But it's actually a little bit more.
You've highlighted it really well, because it becomes a sort of ethical, moral dilemma, not just for, you know, health professionals like you, but also parents will all have a different point of view, whether they want to know, for example,
Absolutely.
or not.
And the other problem with screening, of course,
Really interesting debate, isn't it? You can totally understand someone from Sarah's perspective wanting that fundamental reform, and yet you've clearly laid out why it's a really difficult thing to sort of find the right answer.
We'll get in touch and with their thoughts on that as well, Ravi.
New leader this morning, Jo Swinson, new leader of the Liberal Democrats. The Conservatives will select, well, they've already selected, but we'll find out who the new leader of the Conservative Party is a little bit later on. And you told us earlier on that Sir Winston Churchill, another Prime Minister, birthplace, Blenheim Palace, that's where Carol is this morning.
And I think that might be one of the reasons we sent her there, also because it's going to be very hot. Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
I know it's going to be hot.
Yeah. How are you? Steph's here. How are you doing in the heat?
Do you know,
Verily heavily pregnant doing a heat wave like this, and I just had a bucket of water by the bed, and every now and then I just put my feet in the bucket of water, and then go back
Our
to sleep.
sleep expert was saying, get your
feet
cool
cold.
feet, and
I
it
don't like
regulates
having my
temperature.
feet out though, because I always think of
Somebody's going to come and get them.
Yeah, I totally do. I know that's really bad, but I have like mad nightmares and things, so I always think someone's going to have a nibble of them. Or
Are you taking extra precautions this week with the extra heat?
Yeah, well, I'll give you that. You know,
No,
I
not
think
in my
I'd be-
experience.
All this to think about.
Anyway, you're not here to talk about that, but thank you
God, no,
for all
sorry.
those thoughts.
Too much personal information, sorry everyone.
Lots of headlines
You
about...
forgot we're on telly for a minute.
Yeah, I know, I did actually.
It's excellent. It's much more interesting. Let's talk about airline strikes, possible strikes.
So this is strike action. This is again to do with their pay. There's some legalities around this, so we don't know if the strike's definitely going to happen, but it could begin in early August. So BA pilots could be on strike. Also Ryanair pilots as well. Again, not happy with pay. They're going to be taking a vote on whether.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
7 minutes to 8. Good morning to you. Now, the singer John Newman burst onto the music scene back in 2013 with Love Me Again, you might remember that, and kept collaborating with various artists like Nile Rodgers and Calvin Harris.
But the musician says the pressure... I think that's rather refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks, you can see the sort of how happy he was performing to those quite small venues. Somebody who's been a bit of a superstar.
Why not?
Yeah.
Right now, we're going to get the news, travel and the weather wherever you are. We'll have the headlines here at 8. We shall see you then. Announced. So, Ian, we've waited weeks for this. Just take us through events over the next 24 hours.
Elsewhere today, Labour's governing body will consider proposals to speed up the party's process for dealing with warn that babies' lives are being put at risk because there aren't enough newborn screening checks for rare but serious health conditions.
While many European nations offer 20 checks or more.
Try and crack on and get on with the job of running the country.
And Tom, what about that sort of, you know, the first speech is always an important one, because if you strike that right note, you can.
Dashing for the office, the one that if you don't like cats,
Avoiding the
don't give
cat,
the
yeah,
cat, the
no phone
static shock.
signal. I'd like I'll never be Prime Minister. If I was, I want to sort out my own pants and sock drawer, wouldn't you? I wouldn't like a civil servant doing
Listen,
that for
I'm only
me.
recently finished unpacking boxes after
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
All right, you can follow all of the other political events in Westminster on the BBC News Channel, on the BBC website. We are expecting that announcement just before midday today, so I'm sure lots of you will be looking out for it.
But Tom's given us a really clear idea of what will be going on behind the scenes over the next 24, 48 hours or so.
It's also going to be, for anybody who's moving house, hot. as well. Carol is at Blenheim Palace for us this morning, where finally you can